Hello folks, and welcome into TK Power Sports. Are you looking for a side-by-side that can move a whole bunch of stuff, tow trailers, and haul your entire family down the trail? Well, I've got two great options today, and we're gonna compare them. This is the Can-Am Defender Max Limited, and that is the Kawasaki Ridge Crew Limited. And in this video, we're gonna go over all of the features, look inside and out, and then we're gonna load up those beds with Payload and see how they actually work, so make sure you stay tuned. Let's start by looking at overall size. So this Can-Am Defender comes in with a length at 158 inches, a width at 65 inches, and a height at 81 inches. Compare that to the Kawasaki, which has a overall length of 161 inches, 64 inches of width, and 82.3 inches in height. So yes, the Kawi is just a hair longer, but besides that, they're basically the same size. Now, overall wheelbase on the Kawasaki is 122.2 inches, where the Can-Am has a wheelbase of 115.5 inches. Looking at weight, the Can-Am tips the scales at 2,466 pounds of dry weight, while the Kawasaki has a dry weight of 2,513 pounds. Finally, fuel capacity for this Can-Am is rated at 40 liters, while the Kawasaki can carry 49 liters of fuel. Now I want to look at all the features here, but just before we compare them, let me talk about these two models, because it is true that the Defender is considered a pure utility model, while the Kawasaki Ridge is more of that rec utility model. It sort of straddles those worlds. So a perfect comparison would be the Can-Am Defender versus the Kawasaki Mule, or it would be the Kawasaki Ridge versus the Can-Am Commander. However, there's a few things at play here. First of all, if you just look at size and price, these things are absolutely comparable. We have both limited models here today, so they're both top of the line with all of the features. And then finally, the one thing I just want to put out there is that we talk to a lot of dealers, a lot of salespeople, and I've heard the same thing consistently, which is that a lot of folks walk into the dealership and they're not comparing, utility to utility or sport ute to sport ute. They just say, hey, I was just looking at X model and now I'm looking at Y model, and what do you think of those two? And they're not often in the exact same category. So what I'm saying here is we often hear the comments on YouTube that things need to be perfectly apples to apples. And while I promise you, I do my best to make that happen, sometimes I get two models and go, you know what? These two would absolutely be compared by real customers, and that's why I wanted to do this today. Plus, I think it's interesting to talk about, can a utility model actually be fun on the trail? And then can a rec ute model actually still work as hard as a utility model? Those are good questions too, and all of that we are going to dive into in this video. So that's why I wanted to do this comparison. So that's out of the way. Now let's talk about the actual features here. And I mentioned they're both limiteds, so we're getting all the features. Big steel bumpers up here on the front. The Kawasaki offers a little bit more protection coming up kind of over the headlights here, and a little bit more steel down there, but still nice to have a big bush bar. So if you are, pushing through bushes and trees, that's going to protect you. We're getting worn winches down there. Nice to have the standard winch from the factory. Rolling back, both of them have 30-inch tires, so you're getting the same size tire, and then dual A-arm suspension behind there. The suspension travel numbers are just a little bit different. The Can-Am gets 12 inches of travel front and rear. The Kawasaki gets 12.7 inches of travel front and rear. So almost the same travel numbers. And then I also like to point out, this is all real glass. There's no plexiglass, no plastic here. This is all real proper glass used in these cabins. Now, just looking at styling, I think they both look good. They're both really aggressive. That's what we've come to expect from our modern side-by-sides and ATVs. But why don't you just drop in the comments right now and straight up tell me, which one of these do you think looks better? Let's talk about the business end on both of these side-by-sides. So the Can-Am bed, they both get traditional tailgates, I should first point out. The bed over here on the Can-Am is slightly larger, as you might expect from a utility model, and it gets a couple features. You are getting tie downs down here in the corners, so a couple of hard points right there, which is nice. They put these bucket cutouts in here so you could stand buckets across there. They also get these slots here in the walls. This is for lumber and wood that you can put in there and create dividers, and then you also get these slots on top of the walls. These are for different Can-Am accessories, and yes, this bed does dump, and you can dump with one person from either side. Now, looking at the Ridge, this bed is about 3 inches shorter than the Can-Am's bed. It's about 5 inches skinnier, but it is about an inch deeper. So that's the one thing it gets on the Can-Am. What's interesting is that skinnier number, and really you can attribute it to this. This bed wall is just so thick. In fact, you can see down inside and it's just hollow. So honestly, it kind of feels like wasted space. I'm not sure if that's there for a reason or not, but yeah, the reason this is skinnier just because this wall is so thick. Now there's also cutouts on top of the wall here so you can fit other Kawasaki accessories. There are slots here so you can put dividers in just like the Can-Am, and there's also 4 hard points down here in the corners. So always nice to have that. No bucket cutouts here in the Ridge though. And yes, this one also dumps, and it can also be dumped from either side. So I won't say one bed is way better than another. Nice to have the larger bed, but I already said that's pretty much what you expect when looking at a utility versus a non-utility focused model. You'd want this bed to be a bit bigger, and it is. Let's talk power plants now. So in the Can-Am, we have the HD10 power plant. That is a 976cc V-twin. It's making 82 horsepower. And then I'll show you a couple of the things you need to access back here once the bed is up. First of all, you can check your oil with your dipstick right down here. We get windshield wiper fluid up here on the back wall. Coolant is right next to it, and then your air filter is right here. So yeah, all your maintenance stuff is fairly easy to access here on the Can-Am. Now let's go see the Cowie. And this is a 999cc inline 4-cylinder, and how nice of Kawasaki to show us those spark plugs so it's real obvious that there's 4 cylinders. Over here, total output is 116 horsepower. So yes, the Ridge is definitely a good bit more powerful. Talking about access back here, it's definitely not the same as the Can-Am because the air box, the coolant, the air filter, I should say, all of that stuff you access under the front hood. The only thing I'll point out here, if I lean in, I can see it right here. There's your dipstick. So that's where you're going to check your oil. Besides that, some of the basic maintenance stuff, that's all going to be up front here on the Ridge. Talking under the hood, let me show you what's up here. So once you take this hood off, you get access to your windshield wiper fluid right over here. Fuses and relays are right here. Under this box, this is actually where the Kawasaki is drawing its air from. And that is a higher point on the Ridge than it is on the Can-Am, which is back there in the rear, sort of just above that back tire. So I like to see that. And then right here and here, you can add coolant to this system. When it comes to the air filter locations, the Ridge is a little bit different from a lot of standard side-by-sides. The engine air filter is actually under the back seat, and the cabin air filter or the HVAC air filter is underneath the front seat. Now, one other maintenance thing I want to show you guys, I love that there's this easy to remove grill so you can get in there and clean up your radiator if you've been out playing in the mud, or even if that thing gets caked up with leaves, whatever, you can clean it out real easy. And now the Can-Am, we opened up the little hood right here, and you can see this is the cabin filter on the Can-Am, so much easier to get to on the Cowie. I like that. You're also getting your fuses and relays up here, and then over here you have brake fluid, and tucked in back here you actually have a little toolkit, so I like to see that stuff as well. And then when it comes to removable grill, the Can-Am has one too. It's just much smaller. It's just this little section down here underneath this bumper, but still nice to get that straight in access so you can clean out your radiator and make sure you are not going to overheat. I want to show you underneath these units now. This is the Kawasaki Ridge up above my head. So first of all, up front here, you're a steel bumper. This is my magnet. Into a little steel skid plate protecting your front differential. There's a bit of a gap here, but there's nothing here it's really going to affect. And then you get into the biggest skid plate, which is composite plastic. And this is essentially the same setup as that Can-Am Defender. The very first pieces up front are steel, which are going to take the hardest hits, and that transitions into a full plastic skid plate. And I always think this is your best setup. The pieces up front, they're going to take the real impacts, and then once you get up on a rock, let's say, it's just going to drag on your belly, and the plastic is better for dragging across things. The steel is going to be better for that hard impact and, you know, not shattering or breaking like the plastic might. So I like the way this is under here. You can never complain when something is sealed up this much, right? And then at the very tail end, I just want to point out, it actually remains plastic all the way to the back, so you don't get another steel plate back there. One other thing with this rear suspension I'll show you, you do get these little CV boot guards here. And then one last thing, which I neglected to show you up front, and I think this is very important, is up in here. These are steel. My magnet's on the wrong angle. Let me adjust it. Steel inner fenders. This is something that only Kawasaki does as standard equipment, and they make the argument that when you're flying down the trail, if you take a big log or a big stick right up through this fender, it's going to stab right into the occupants, and that has happened in other side-by-sides. So I appreciate that. That's a nod to safety right there, and it's just not an area you might think that needs protection, but in that scenario where something big wants to come up into the cabin, it could save your life. So yes, I really appreciate these steel inner fenders here on the Ridge. Let's take a look inside now, starting here with the Kawasaki. And the first thing I want to say is I like the way these doors feel. They feel nice and substantial, and they feel really just well built, well put together. Now, these are rear hinged only in the back. The front doors are front hinged, which is sort of interesting, and that's one difference between this and the Can-Am. I like the rear hinged rear doors. The one thing I don't understand is why this doesn't open wider. It just doesn't make any sense to me why this wouldn't go to, at least 90 degrees, if not more, because sometimes you are loading big things into the back seat, not just people, sometimes stuff, and you got to come in this small opening. So yeah, that's just one decision Kawasaki made that, yeah, I don't really get. Anyways, now let me climb in. So I stand at 6'2". And I fit great back here. Loads of headroom, very important for wearing a helmet. That's going to be no problem at all. Plenty of knee room. My legs are nice and low, so they're not up tall, anything like that. The bar is at a good distance. I get a little bit of storage here. This one little sort of bungee pocket, and then there's a little space in the rear of this console. I also do get this, if nobody's sitting in the middle. So a little bit of storage here, and then a couple of cup holders there, which is kind of nice as well. But yeah, overall, this is more than enough space for me to sit back here on a long ride and be comfortable. And these rear windows, I'll also point out, are also powered on the Kawasaki, which is nice. Now, when it comes to other features back here, this seat bottom does flip up and you can get to your air filter. And then this seat bottom on this side is actually fully removable. So if you don't have anyone sitting there and you want to pile some stuff up here, you can pop that off and do that. Now let's move up to the front. And the front door actually almost does open to 90 degrees. So they paid attention to that in the front, just not in the rear, which I just, again, don't totally understand. Let me climb in. And we will first talk about the storage here. So when it comes to at-hand storage, I have a deep bin here. You can just see how much of my arm goes in there. So that's really nice just because of how deep it is. You're getting a pair of cup holders down here. I get a molded cup holder up here for the driver and one over there for the passenger. When we look over here, you're getting the lower glove box, but you're also getting a little upper glove box. Not very big, still nice to have. There is power here, a couple of USB-A ports, so you can keep your devices charged, which is nice as well. So a decent amount of at-hand storage. One other little overhead storage too. You got some sunglasses or something, you can chuck them up there. So now let's start it up and bring it to life. And you're gonna notice sort of one of the hallmark features here in our Limited, this really nice looking infotainment system. Now this is supplied to Kawasaki by Garmin, but the first thing you see is just how good the graphics look. They really do look crystal clear. I'm not gonna go into all of the details here because there really are a lot, but it has full navigation. You can change your little icons. You can change how the nav works. It'll bring up different campgrounds in the area and parks. It'll also tell you where you cannot ride. I actually put in a local address here and it said, nope, you can't get there from here. So that works really well and I like the way it looks. Same goes for this screen right in front of me. Again, the contrast is just really nice. It looks quite sharp. And this thing also has cameras, front and rear cameras, which you're going to access on this screen up here. Now, I will say the cameras don't look all that great. They're not high quality cameras, but that's okay because they still do their job, which is just show you what's directly in front or behind you. And especially behind you, it's a big help when hooking up trailers. Having that backup camera, despite the low quality, means I can hook up a trailer by myself. So definitely like that screen too. Now looking at the windows, I can now show you they're all powered, so I can control both fronts from there, and then the rear windows I control down here. So I have control of all 4 power windows, which is also nice. And then you also have to talk about HVAC. That's one of the main reasons why you might go for one of these models. And here in the Kawasaki, these are classic HVAC controls, basically pulled right out of every car you ever owned in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, earlier than that too. I love to see this, very simple, clear controls for the HVAC. And today, I gotta be honest, it's a pretty comfortable temperature outside, so we haven't really needed the HVAC that much. But I have used the Ridge on both really hot days and really cold days, and I can tell you that in my experience, the HVAC blows really hot or really cold, depending on what you need. Yes, it works quite well. Finally, I should also point out a massive stereo system here in our Ridge Limited. I got 4 speakers here, 1 each over the driver and passenger, and then 1 each over your rear passengers as well. So yes, you're getting all of that sound is going to be really pumping in this cab. What else besides that? I do got a little rear view mirror here too, but I should show you side mirrors. I think these are really important for these big full cab models because they're hard to see around. Let's face it, the sight lines are tougher here, so nice to have a set of side mirrors. And that's about it on the Ridge. Let's take a look inside the Can-Am now. Now let's climb inside the Can-Am. First, let me talk to you about the doors. So the rear doors are also rear hinged here, and just like the Kawasaki, they don't open that wide, and this is just a choice I don't understand. Why not allow these doors to go out to 90 degrees? One other big difference I see in the doors is that on the Can-Am, there's small little wire limiting straps that stop the doors from opening wider, whereas the Kawasaki actually uses these small metal bars, much more reminiscent of what you're gonna see on your car, and it just makes the doors on the Kawasaki feel better. They have a little bit more give to them, where these ones, when they hit the end of that travel on that strap, it's very stiff and rigid, and yeah, it just doesn't feel high quality, where the doors on the Kawasaki do feel high quality. Now let's talk about this back seat though, and I will say when it comes to utility, I love this. You can flip all these up in the Can-Am and look how much space that opens up here. So once again, if you're just loading stuff, big tall things back here, this is really going to give you a lot of space. And you can mix and match. If you want to take 2 passengers and just have something over here, you can do that too. So I really like that functionality here in the Defender. Plus it also gets the little cup holders like the Cowie as well. Now talking about space, I fit in here pretty good too. Loads of headroom, so gonna be fine for the helmet. It's definitely a little bit different though. In the Ridge, I felt like I was sitting a little bit taller up. The supports were a little bit lower, or the handhold, whereas here the handhold's a little bit taller. I don't think it's that much difference. I guess I just feel like in here I'm sitting kind of more down in the side-by-side. In the Kawasaki, I was up in more of a commanding position. And yeah, actually the commanding position feels a little bit better. It just feels like you can see out and around this thing a little bit better. But outside of that, and that's probably more personal preference, everything else here is fine. Plenty of space. My legs and knees are comfortable. Good handhold right here, and lots of room for the helmet. That's what's important. No storage back here though, I should point out. None of those little cubbies or pockets like in the Ridge. Now let's go up front. And here's the other big difference. The front doors here are also rear hinged in the Can-Am. This is what Can-Am does with basically all their side-by-sides. They go for the rear hinge doors. I don't know. I feel like, yeah, it might help you with ingress, egress, because the door really does get out of the way. But it also just feels a little bit weird sometimes, a little bit clunky. And from a seated position, it makes it a little harder to reach out and grab the door. So there are pros and cons there too. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on sort of the rear hinged versus front hinged doors debate and what you think about it. Let me climb in now. And we'll start off with at-hand storage, and there is a ton of it here. So first of all, if you don't have anyone on this bench seat, you can bring this down and get to your cup holders, which is nice. I get a pair of cup holders up here with a little rubber bushing there to actually hold your drinks in place, which is cool. In front of the passenger, a nice storage down below. You're getting this upper glove box here, and this upper glove box has a trick, which is you close that up, you grab the handle, and that whole thing comes with you. This is one of those things, yeah, this is a pure utility model, so you get a little, you know, work box that you can take with you with all your tools. And if you do have this out of the machine, it just leaves you with a massive storage bin up there on the dash. So I really like that. That's very smart. Good nod to utility. Pops back in there and locks back in. And then I can also show you here underneath the passenger seat, there's another one. That bin can come with you, so you can load it up with tools or drinks and snacks, whatever you need, and then take it with you. When you get back in, you throw it back in there. So some really smart utility features right there on the Defender. Outside of those spots, I'm also getting a little spot up here in front of the driver, big enough for some sunglasses. So yeah, a really solid amount of at-hand storage, and with those removable bins, a little bit more of a nod to utility. Now let me start it up, and you're gonna notice one of the other differences right away, which is I don't have fancy screens here in the Can-Am. I have a much more basic meter up here in front of me. It does look fine, and it is delivering all of my necessary information. I can go through the menu, the settings, you can change up your units, you can look at battery volt and temperature, so that's all there. Drive mode is all controlled down here off of these buttons as well. And yeah, straight up, you're just not getting as much technology here in the Can-Am as you are in the Kawasaki. Now, you can almost forgive it because of the price difference, and we'll get to that in just a minute. But right now, I got to talk HVAC, and I have to tell you that this little system in the Can-Am, I really dislike it. It makes no sense to me. They've put it all on one knob, so I got to press the knob. You can set cool versus heat or auto. Then you can go low, medium, or high on the fan. Then you can change the temp. I just don't understand why they couldn't have put 3 knobs right here like Kawasaki has. Give me that traditional HVAC setup every time. Fumbling around with one little knob just seems silly. The little screen is just so small. Yeah, everything about the way this is operated to me is just not good. The way it actually works though is fine. Once again, we've had this Can-Am for a while now. I've had it on cold mornings and hot afternoons, and the HVAC definitely blows cold or hot exactly like you want it to. There are defrost vents up there at the windshield too, so if you wake up and your windshield is fogged up or iced up, you're gonna be able to clean it off. So yeah, in terms of the HVAC actually working, I'm not sure one is that much better than the other, but in terms of operating the HVAC, I'll take the Kawasaki every single time. So that's really it for you know, deep dive on the interiors and a lot of the features here. Now, of course, it is time to actually hit the trail. And before we go have fun, let's do some work. We're gonna load some payload into these beds and find out which one hauls better. And now, folks, we're loaded up here in the Ridge, so let's go to work. So what you just saw us load there is 10 rubber mats, horse stall mats, that weigh 97 pounds apiece for a total of 970 pounds. And the bed capacity here on the Ridge, just like on the Can-Am, is 1,000 pounds. So we are basically at max capacity, and that's what I wanted to do to really feel the differences. So first of all, let me talk to you about the power. I have it in low range, and I have it in work mode, and I'm just gonna put my foot into it a bit. Nice. So I will say, I do think the Kawasaki, I should say, does feel like it has a bit more power, especially as the RPMs climb, and there is such a smoothness to this Kawasaki power that I like. So yeah, definitely I give the edge to the power here, but obviously they both have plenty of power to move this load. But then when it comes to actually rolling down the trail, the biggest downside to the Ridge is it's really squishy. This has that kind of boat on the ocean feeling. When you're going around a corner, it leans into that corner really aggressively, and it just has a bit of a tendency to feel kind of top heavy. It feels like if I took a corner way too fast, it's definitely gonna roll. Now my steering wheel doesn't feel really light. It's not like my nose feels like it's way up in the air. It's just straight up the suspension here is soft. Now on the Can-Am, the suspension feels much more controlled. It had a bit of that kind of squish to it, but not nearly as much as the Ridge. So if I'm cruising around on a trail like this, overall, the Can-Am feels more confident because it doesn't feel like it wants to roll over on me into the corner. Now, I will admit, this is not a massive difference. If you have this much weight, they're both gonna do the job pretty well for you. But yes, overall sort of confidence level from behind the wheel, I'm gonna give it to the Can-Am. And right there, yeah, it was a bit of an off-camber hill. So once the terrain starts to get a little trickier too, again, you really feel how much you roll through these corners. And I guess overall what that also means is I naturally want to drive this slower when it's loaded. Just right away I find myself going, okay, keep your speeds down. You don't want to go too crazy because you have all that weight in the back, which I just kind of didn't really feel from the Defender. So maybe you expected this result, but it was important to do in my head. The utility machine here is going to feel better when it's hauling weight, especially up here at the max. Now let's do some four-wheel drive testing, everybody. And the systems here are similar, but not quite the same. So here in the Kawasaki Ridge that I'm sitting in, we have two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, and lock. And in two-wheel drive, the rear differential is unlocked, so essentially that's one-wheel drive, or turf mode if you want a different name for it. When I put it into four-wheel drive, it sends power to all four wheels, but both differentials will now act like limited slip differentials. So yes, you're not actually getting that full lock even in four-wheel. And then when I turn it over to lock, it's gonna lock the rear and the front differential here in the Kawasaki. The Can-Am actually gives you more choices because you can also put it into two-wheel drive with the rear unlocked, but then you can lock that rear differential. It has its own control, and I like that. I like having more choice. Maybe I do want to lock up in two-wheel drive. The Can-Am gives you that option. Then when the Can-Am, when you go to four-wheel drive, the front differential becomes automatic. So once again, it's going to act like a limited slip. If there's some slip there, it's going to send the power across. And then in the Can-Am, you can lock the front and the rear and be fully locked here too. So you can achieve most of the same things, but the Can-Am gives you a couple more choices with that independently locking and unlocking rear diff. So for now, we're gonna go through our offset ruts in four-wheel drive, and nothing locked up here, but both differentials should act like limited slips, so it should send the power. Now I did this in the Can-Am as well, and that's exactly what happened. The Can-Am started to slip, and you could just feel the front end react and send the power where it needed to be. So let's see what happens with the Kawi. Okay, creeping up here. My rear is going to start to climb right about here. We should get some slip. Wow. I didn't feel any slip there, and I think that's mostly because I don't think I'm lifting any wheels. Usually these mounds are plenty big to get some wheels off the ground. Here we go. Here it is, here it is. Okay then. Well, the Ridge didn't seem like it was sending any power at all. Let's just try one more time. Okay, it's trying. You can see it trying to send that power, but it's not able to get enough to the wheel that needs it. That's interesting. The Can-Am was able to do this with that auto setting. The Kawasaki is not. So now we're going to go over to lock. That's going to fully lock up our front and rear differentials, and that should get us through here. Now, one other thing I've noticed though with this Kawi is it's not so quick to lock. Like, they're not locked yet according to the screen. So sometimes that means you just got to go a little bit forward, a little bit backwards, on the power, off the power. Come on, Kawasaki, lock up for me. Still doesn't show them locked. Oh, now they are. Oh my gosh, yeah, see? Full diff lock, there it is. So it did take a beat for it to get there, but yes, the Kawasaki with full diff lock absolutely crawled through there. But that was a good test because I think it's safe to say that the auto settings in the Can-Am are straight up better than this Kawasaki. And seeing how it dealt with those, yeah, I wouldn't count on those auto settings here. If I was going into something where I'm getting some big articulation, I would go in fully locked up in the Ridge, where in the Can-Am, I'd go in the auto setting and see what happens because it was pretty dang good. So that's, in my books, check mark in the Can-Am box for the four-wheel drive system. Okay, folks, now that's enough working with them, enough slow-speed four-wheel drive testing. Let's hit the trail and see which one is properly more fun. Starting here in the Can-Am. Oh, and I should mention, we've actually had this Defender for a little while now, so I've done a walk around and I did a full individual review. So if you really want to dig more into this machine, go watch those videos. Let's hit it now though and talk to you about how it compares to the Kawasaki. So I've got it in high, two-wheel drive. There is no sport mode here in the Defender. It has eco mode, work mode, and then just normal. So I've got it in normal. Let's do it. And it hits hard off the line, man. It's really good power. Now, the first thing, there's two things I noticed sort of right off the bat, actually. And the very first one is the suspension travel. 12 inches of travel is a lot. And frankly, this is the kind of machine where Can-Am could have said, yeah, it's a utility machine. You probably don't need 12 inches of suspension travel. But the second the speeds pick up, you appreciate having it because, yeah, you're able to run at much higher speeds and the suspension is still taking care of you. Now, that being said, the suspension here isn't super soft. I don't want to call it stiff, but I will say it's that good blend of body control and then a bit of stiffness, but it's not uncomfortable. It's not, you know, rattling the teeth out of my head or anything. And remember that once we get in the Cowie because its suspension is very different than this Can-Am. Now, power steering wise, they are both the same in that they're not adjustable, but here in the Defender, the wheel's got a bit more weight to it. You know, it's light, but it still has some decent feedback, more so than what I was getting in the Ridge, which personally I feel like is a little over boosted, especially for fun applications. Again, in a work scenario, I'm okay with the light power steering, but if I just want to go rip a trail and have fun, I'd like to get some more weight, some more feedback, you know, give me some of that in my hands, and I feel like Can-Am has done that. I'm even able to slide this, and it's just really controllable. That's one of the best words I have. The handling, very predictable, very controllable, and the more I run this thing hard, the more I want to run it harder, and that's always a good sign. In this Can-Am, I take corners, and right away my brain goes, oh, you probably could have done that faster. You probably could have done that quicker. You probably could have turned harder. And that's just, it's a signal of how good the handling is here. And I gotta tell you, I feel like this is actually a trend across the industry. I wanna say Polaris kind of started it, but utility machines these days, especially at the top end, and this is a top end utility machine, they're very much being designed with more recreation in mind. Now, yes, these brands do have sort of the recreation utility units like the Ridge, but they also just focused on making their pure utility units more fun on a daily basis, and that's what I'm getting here. So you'll notice I stopped. That's because I'm at the mud pit here on the Hydro line. I'm in low range now, four-wheel drive. Let's creep through the mud. Not a lot of water here, but oh, it's getting muddy again. Nice Can-Am, loads of clearance. Tires were absolutely fine. So no problem creeping through the mud there. And yeah, low range feels pretty good as well. Although I will say one thing, you maybe saw it there. The shifter here in the Defender it feels terrible. There's no other way to say it. It's really rubbery. The gates between the gears are not defined very well. And this is something Can-Am is aware of, because maybe you already know that there is a 2026 Defender which has been fully redesigned. And that's one feature that Can-Am made a point of changing, is the shifter. And they talked about how the shifter now is way easier to use. The gates are more defined. It's just better. So it does work. It does its job. But yeah, it's just that rubbery, wishy-washy shifter feeling is not a good feeling, and doesn't lend itself either to a feeling of overall quality. Now I'm coming back down the hill. I want to talk about engine braking. I'm in low range. My foot is off the brake, off the gas now. This is all Can-Am. And this is what you want to see. Super controlled, never freewheeling, creeping me down this hill at 2 miles per hour. That's what you want out of your low range. And you know, in an empty scenario, it doesn't matter that much. But if I did have a load on the back, if I did have a trailer on, you want to feel like that engine braking is there to help control the load. And that was, dare I say, pretty much perfect. So we'll see how the Ridge compares. And you know what? That's pretty much already it for the Can-Am. Oh, you know what? One other complaint I have here before I get out, I have to mention, no side mirrors. Now, yes, Can-Am will sell you side mirrors out of the accessory catalog, but come on guys, once you build a unit that's this big with a full cab, it almost becomes a necessary safety item to have side mirrors. Every time I'm backing this thing up, I look over there just by, you know, habit, and there's no mirror there. So yeah, Can-Am, those should be standard here. I'm happy I have them, but they should be standard. Now folks, let's go get the Ridge and see how that stacks up. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here we are in this Ridge. So one thing I haven't mentioned up until now is this is the Ridge Crew XR model. Here in Canada, we only get the XR limited version of the Crew. So that's why I didn't mention it, because this is the only Ridge Crew you can buy in Canada. But it's important to say that it's the XR, because the XR is supposed to be the more fun model. It gets more power. It also gets larger tires, certain features like that, which should make it a bit better on trail. So yes, this thing not only has all the nice interior creature comforts and features, but it has all of those exterior things as well that should make it better. Let's find out about it. So we've got it in high range, 2-wheel drive. Let's kick it and feel the power. You know what, everybody? It feels crazy to say, because I know this has so much more horsepower, but it just doesn't hit as hard off the line as the Can-Am. I don't know what else to say. It feels like it revs way higher too, like the RPM really flies before I really feel the power come on. So yeah, this is one of those models where, let me kick it again. It's okay, it's not disappointing. It's just disappointing, I guess, from the perspective of looking at that number, 116 horse, and then looking at the 82 in the Can-Am and thinking, well, obviously, Kawasaki's gonna feel better, but it just doesn't. And I think that's a function of the transmission, just how the CVT is engaging. Could be a function of where the overall top speed lays. And then also weight. This is the heavier unit. The Kawasaki weighs more than that Can-Am does. And it could very well just be the power to weight difference. So even though it's got more horses, it also is heavier, so it's got more weight to drag around. And I have this thing in sport mode too, so it's delivering me, you know, the most aggressive power that it has. So from behind the wheel, and I said this in the back seat, but it's true in the front as well, the Kawi, again, has a much taller seating position, much more of that commanding feeling, where the Can-Am, you kind of sit down in it a little bit more. And for me personally, I like that feeling of being down in it, especially for a more fun-focused machine. And I realize that's a weird thing to say, because the Can-Am is less fun-focused than the Ridge is, but that's the way it comes across. And then same with these seats. Unlike a lot of our, you know, pure sport side-by-sides today, where they have bucket seats, they're really low down, sometimes they're even raked back a bit, this seating position is very vertical. This is very much more reminiscent of a Kawasaki Mule than it is of a Teryx or of a KRX. So it's another example of where I know they're saying that the Ridge is sort of sport ute and it's, you know, crossing those lines, but there's so many things here that, to me, in my books, still kind of lean towards the utility side of things. And then talking overall noise, the Can-Am, this is a funny difference too. The Can-Am had more squeaks and rattles. There's some squeaks and rattles here in the Ridge, but they weren't as bad as on the Defender. On the flip side, the engine in the Defender is absolutely quieter than it is here in this Ridge. And I remember the first time I drove the Ridge, and what I really focused on then was the exhaust note. Because it's that i4, there's a bit of a smoothness to the exhaust note. Maybe it's also just familiarity. I mean, you know, I've heard so many 4-cylinder engines in my life, as most of us have, so I don't mind the way it sounds, and there's something about it that's a little smoother than the Can-Am, which is a little more gruff and rough sounding. But just overall noise levels, it is noisier in this Kawasaki, I would say, than in the Can-Am, because the engine drone is constant here. When I'm cruising at 30 kilometers an hour in the Can-Am, the engine is at a very livable level. When I'm at 30 here in the Cowie, I feel like I'm already starting to yell a bit and to get a bit louder. And then especially when the speeds and the RPM pick up, yeah, the Ridge is louder. So a little bit less squeaks and rattles here, but definitely more overall noise. And now, folks, we are back at the mud pit, so let's see how these compare. I've got it in low range. Let's flip it over to 4-wheel drive, and in we go. Wow, and low range feels really good here. Low range here feels lower, more aggressive, and more immediate than it did in the Defender. Nice. Really, really like the low range here. The difference between high and low is also more apparent here in the Ridge than it was in the Can-Am. So a really solid low range. Now I just shifted this Kawasaki, so it's a good time to talk about that. The shifter here feels nothing like the Can-Am. It has very defined gates, feels really good in my hand. And at this point in the video, I'll just stop here and talk about that for a second. The overall quality and fit and finish is definitely better in the Ridge. Everything you touch and feel just feels well put together, well screwed in, and that just can't be said for the Can-Am. The Defender, for instance, has the windshield that can open up. Well, the handle on that windshield is just rattling. It's just sitting there, going all over the place. The tailgate on the Can-Am Defender doesn't always close properly, and we loaded all that weight into it. It put a bit of a bow in the gate as well, which kind of stuck around. There's a couple other examples. I already pointed out the doors and the way they're held in place, the screen, the quality of the way it looks, the seats. The Can-Am, we actually have one seat cover that's popping off of the foam. Nothing like that here in the Ridge. So I do think it's worth mentioning that just living with these machines for the last couple of days, I have started to just feel like, yeah, everything in the Cowie feels higher quality than the Can-Am. There's really no better way to put it. Okay, so now we're coming back down the hill into our mud pit, and let's see what low range does. Whoa, it just stopped me right there. It's a bit flat there though. Okay, let's see. So we're low range. Whoa, it's running away. It's running away. It's freewheel. Oh, and then it caught. That was interesting. Oh, and it's freewheeling again. Freewheeling, and caught. That is absolutely not what you want out of your low range. I just got to get through the mud first. Oh, but the power in low feels really good. That's an interesting difference too. That power in low feels awesome here in the Ridge. I probably could just keep it in low, but then, man, it's really revving that engine. It gets loud. Back to what we just did on the hill there, though. Yeah, this was not controlling the load very well at all. It was allowing it to totally run away, feeling like it was in neutral kind of thing, and then the engine brake would grab. So in terms of engine braking and low range down a hill, the Can-Am is leaps and bounds better than the Ridge is. The last thing I'll talk about is the handling on a trail like this, and that definitely goes to the Defender as well. And that's because the Kawasaki is soft. Listen, there's no sway bar here in this model, so it just rolls through the corners. Even on without a load in the back, it gets that, you know, boat on the ocean, on waves kind of feeling, and that is not confidence inspiring. In the Defender, I'd go around a corner and think, oh man, I gotta go faster next time. In this Ridge, I'm constantly taking corners and going, slow down, you're gonna roll it, slow down. So yeah, it has a top heavy feeling and it's got a lot of body roll, and none of that leads to confidence, and quite frankly, none of it leads to fun. That confidence feeling, that predictability in the handling, that leads to you having more fun because you're just not kind of questioning exactly how fast to be going or how to handle the machine. So overall comfort, it's close. The Kawasaki is more comfortable in a straight line. The suspension has more travel, feels like it's absorbing the ground better, but going around a corner, I would take the Defender every time. So that means overall, if you're talking just handling and comfort and suspension, I think the Can-Am is better. And now folks, let's let the machines do the talking. You know we gotta do a drag race. Let's head out there and do it and see which one is quicker. And now folks, I want to see what the top speed here is in the Ridge. We've already done this in the Can-Am, so let's find out here. And for once, we're going to have kilometers per hour and miles per hour all displayed at the same time, because you can do that here with the double screens. Anyways, sport mode, two-wheel drive, HVAC off, windows closed, let's go. Well folks, I saw 112 kilometers per hour, and it honestly felt like there was a little bit more there. I just ran out of runway, and that's sort of the story with this Ridge. It's very much geared towards top speed, so I wouldn't say it was much higher than 112, but probably a little bit for your top speed here in the Ridge Crew. Alrighty folks, now it's time for the drag race. I've enlisted Dad over there in the Can-Am. I'm here in the Kawasaki. We're lined up on an empty dirt road. We've got them in high range, two-wheel drive. I'm in sport mode because I have it. The HVAC systems are off. Let's see what happens here, Dad. On go. And 3, 2, 1, go! Well, ladies and gentlemen, very interesting, and it did back up sort of what I felt on the trail, which is to say, the Can-Am hit a little harder off the line. He got a nose ahead of me right away, but then slowly but surely the Ridge kept climbing, and I overtook him. So I do believe Kawasaki really geared this thing a little more for top speed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this one, but I still have to drop one of the most important numbers on you, and that is the price. So for this Kawasaki Ridge Crew XR Limited here in Canada, all in, including destination prices, you're talking about $51,000 Canadian. Over here at the Can-Am, all in, destination price and everything, you're talking about $42,000 Canadian. So yeah, it's a clear $9,000 more to go for the Kawasaki. Now I will say, the Kawi straight up has more features inside. Way nicer screens, the navigation system, the stereo. So when you start to look around, you can see where a lot of that money went to. But if we are straight up talking about which machine is more fun, which machine handles better, and then which machine works harder, in all of those categories, I come back to the Defender every single time. And sure, I will also admit that the Kawasaki feels a little bit better built. It feels like the quality here is better, but let me remind you, $9,000 cheaper. And for that money, I can live with everything I've seen here on this Can-Am. So yes, overall, if you're asking me to lay my money down between these two, I'm gonna go for the Defender. But now, of course, I need to hear from you because I realize there's a lot of different opinions here, and the usage case is really going to make you decide on which one of these you might go for. So drop in the comments, let me know all of your thoughts. I want to hear them. And then as always, while you're down there, don't forget to hit like, hit subscribe, hit join to become a member, and come right back here to TK Power Sports and see what we're testing next. See ya.